Then by Jim then the Jin Shevan Rajan by Yanda Bazo Ribada Shazon then Bandevare Shevan Jim by Jivon. Kalo Juvan Lana Mevan Hada Menam Jet. Sanjay Jim then Benjawa Shajato Bana Shaz. Should Jazo Shevan then by Jim then the Jin Rajan by Yanda Bazo Sanjay Ribada Shazon. The Harishavan Jidin Chamba Jivon de Vakano. Lana Meba Lada Menam Jet and Sanjay Jim. Bejawa Shajato Bana Shaz and Washudo Jasucha. Temba Jumden the Jinshavan Dajuma Yanda Bazobesan. Ribada Shazun Demba Devareshavan Jidin Chamba Jivon. Kalo Juvan Lana Meba Lada Menam Jet and Sanjay Jumden. Bejawa Shajato Bana Shaz and Washudo Jasucha. Kanze Ganyan Zowa Jedam Sea Sajan Dena Combandu. Nanin Jidin Dena Georgia Zowan Tezekeva Jama Shaz. Nanda Gunga Chodo Susawa Yishi Jasu Sejan Gumbo. Chawa Jidin Sumna Meba Gumbo Chunye Jama Shaz. Senjon Demba Chimenda Vishi Sendon Jawa Jama Shaz. Dijana Siva Sumaji Nyame Kishin Jama Shaz. Gumbo Tuji Chedem Batam Jikin Betam Solomon Yendin. The Jinshan Shaz and Motaben Desachawa giving as on the Chidu Telam Shojo was Shinju Jana Shaz. Chene Treva Lamyando Lavatana Rabune, Shingatam by Gindula Shaz and Montivachi and Mishashi Gavat. Rangi Simne Yanzo de Denesanjeta Kamara Vimamet. Dumaseva Chubra, minimum of the agenda, but the Shishan with the Sonam Dia Tomjeseva Yokobantam the change and Gada Nada Chiva love to be Sibes or one
to the teacher,
the blessed one, the core destroyed, the completely perfect, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata know of the world, supreme guide beings to the team, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely
fully awakened one, blessed one, glorious conqueror.
the subduer of the
Shakya
subject.
clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one gone beyond, the foe destroyed, completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, no of the word, supreme guide of beings to be day, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one,
The blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge.
To the teacher,
The blessed one, the one gone beyond, the four
full
destroyed,
destroyer,
completely
perfected,
fully
fully
awakened,
awakened being,
perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata,
no
know
of
of
the
the
word,
word, supreme
supreme
guide
guide
of beings to the team, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely fully awakened, the blessed one, glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans, you are born in this time, your peace out of science rise and said, I am supreme in this world. To you, the wise man, I prostrate.
With your bodies,
All supremely pure, wisdom ocean like golden mountain, fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, to you I prostrate.
to the spring signs, face like Mother's moon,
Color like gold, to you I prostrate.
you are the maker of the three worlds and incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate.
The Savior given great compassion, the teacher of all understanding, the field of merit to qualities like vast ocean, to you the one to thusness I prostrate.
Purity which makes one free from virtue which frees one from the
lower realms, by pure reality that transmits and prostrate those who are liberated and all on the sure path to liberation. The holy field qualified with realizations who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit and
perform only
Perform
perfect
righteous
virtuous actions, simply your mind will achieve the teaching of the Buddha. The star, a flame, an illusion, a drop of pure level, a dream, a flash. If he conditioned things as such, through these merits may all sentient beings obtain the rank of all saints, subdue the foe of all
Sanje Chanda Soje Chanda Chanchu Badon Tane Lage Jeso Jeba Sonam Je Dola Peje Sanje Sanje Chanda Soje Chanda Chanchu Badon Tane Lage Jeso Jeba Sonam Je Dola Peje Sanje Sanje Chanda Soje Chanda Chanchu Badon Tane Lage Jeso Jeba Sonam Je Dola Peje Sanje until I'm alive to the Buddha and Lama the Son.
I create by practicing giving in the other perfections. I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving in the other perfections. I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. To the merit I create by practicing giving in the other perfections. May I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Kede Pumba Dayana, Ketan Chiba Chendo, Kede Pumba Namnesia, Pumba Senior, Danya Yoba Mayana, Dagi Yoba Kala, Dada, Dagi Shiva, Nanzimanya Zimeka, Ten Yoba Mayende, Nanzimanya Zimeka, Kato, Nada Shiranya Dama, Dada Daginyam Sana, Yawana Bakasha, the Zip and the Kawase, let on you Mosebata, let on you Monamdole, the Datu, the Tomani, Nagoshi Jatajuja, the Message at the Sajanam Jatatan, the Mega Message. Jurashavandova, the Simju and the Bezu, Majabatan, Chunin, the song. Tamji Yanda Yanda Mia, Yanda Yanda Mayini, Yanda Mia, the Sanjay. Sheneshimeshivano, Jubano, Nando, the Mia, Tele, Kala Dinagajuba, Tele, Dinamia, Teleshama, Asia, the Jessica. Sanjay Jidem, Velamja, Tamba, Luzin Juba, the Tijima, Tadime, Chabam. Zosanjana, Majushi, and Yedana, Severa, Sanjay. Temba Miller of the dear, the chair of the session of the Chudia, Kangi, and was one member, Chevan member, some member, one member. But the message when you said the Mazoba, Tamajana Charles, Larry. Sounds too loud. Can you turn off? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You are in the party.
Some of my wife's relatives, some of our relatives are over outside.
So, yeah, page number 91. Page number 91. So we are still in the first ground. So I think here, the Diamond Sutras. The Diamond Sutra 2 clearly state this same point about Shabaka realizing emptiness. So Subhati. So what do you think of this? Does the stream enter have the thought, I have attained the fruit of stream entry? Subhati replied, O blessed one, he does not. Why is this so? Blessed one, this is so because he does not enter anywhere, hence he is called stream entry. So Gyunda Shubhas, we call it in Tibetan Gyunda Shubha. So lower vehicle, the stream entry, once return, and no more returning, and Arhat. So this the and Hinayana or lower vehicle, noble path start from the stream entry. So first path of accumulations, and the path of preparations, path of seeing. So the first path of seeing in the lower vehicle called stream entry, Gyunda Shubhas. So entry means here the emptiness. Although they already have the realization emptiness within the path of accumulation, the path of preparations. So especially when they reach the noble path, so path of seeing, there's a stream entry means now they have directly, without the mediations, without through the imaginations, without through thought. So directly they observe into the emptiness. So the first of the noble wisdom to call stream entry. So then the within the path of meditations, and then there are what do you call once return and no more return. So once return means noble Hinayana, noble being, which has kind of still have the desirams afflictions, not yet abandoned. So that's called once a return. So there's a possible of returning back and the desiram. So no more returning means Hinayana, noble being, who has already abandoned all the desirams afflictions, but still there are the form ram and formless rams afflictions. So no more returning. So then after that no more returning, the Hinayana Arhat. So Arhat means the fourth destroyer, Dajjamba, right? Who has, eliminate even the seed of the afflicted emotions, right? Total elimination of the afflicted emotions, the state of that called Arhat. So here in the noble being who is in the stream entry has any kind of thought that I have reached the stream entry, right? So here this is this noble, the stream entry, the noble being, and his the wisdom or his consciousness totally observing in the emptiness. Therefore, there is no thought of me and thought of me entering in the stream entrance, right? Because his whole mind and totally kind of inseparable from the absence of intrinsic existence. There is no thought of me and my attainment. So it is also says the blessed one, if this stream enterer were to harbor the thought, I have attained the fruit of stream entry, and this is itself would constitute the grasping itself, the grasping at sentient beings, grasping at life force, the grasping at person. So which means if hypothetically, if this noble being who are in the kind of the deep meditation emptiness still have a thought of me and my attainment, then he must have the grasping at the self-existence, and there must be a self kind of me sense of person, sense of kind of life force, and sense of person, male or females. So which means he hasn't really kind of, it's not totally, in the meditation of emptiness. The similar statements are found in the relation to the remaining three abiding in the fruit as well. So remaining three abiding means once more, so once return, and no more returning, and Arhat. So all of them, so when they entering, or when they, when they are in the deep meditation, they're meditating with the emptiness, so there must not be any kind of concept of me or person or life force. So the statement, if one grasps at the one who has attained the stream interest ground, as well as the attained fruit as real and engender the thought, I have attained the stream entry. This would constitute the grasping at his self-existence, suggested that the grasping at the true existing of the two person, as well as the fruit, are a form of grasping at self-existence, so which means they haven't really realized the emptiness. If there is thought of me. So of these grasping at self-existing, of these, the first is the grasping at self-existing person, right? Thought of me is the grasping of self-existence. And while the second constitutes the grasping at self-existence of the phenomena, my attainment, myself and my hand, my leg, my thoughts. So existence of thought, the statement that the stream enterer does not apprehend with the thought, I have attained the fruit, on the basis of grasping a true existing, is made from the point of view that it is not the case that he has not eradicated the object of apprehension of the grasping of true existence. This does not suggest, however, that such person has no innate grasping at all. So now the difference here is the stream entry, once returned, no more returnings. All of them, when they are in the deep meditations, when they are in the observing, in the absence of intrinsic existence of the self, so there is no thought of me, there is no thought of my attainment. Me and my is not there. So that does not mean they have eradicated all the innate, the grasping of self. So, like once return, when they meditate in emptiness, there is no grasping of self, but the wisdom, the very realizations, the emptiness, direct perception of the emptiness has not really eradicated all of the innate grasping of self. So there is no manifestation of the grasping of self at the time of in their meditations, right? So innate grasping at all. On the basis of explanations offered here, one should understand the similar statement related to the subsequent fruit, once returner, non-returner, and Arhat. Although some Sharvaka and Savatantrika Madhyamika masters interpret the meaning of these diamond cutter citations differently, so So Diamond Cutter is saying the Subhadha, what do you think of this? Does the stream entry have thought? I have attained the fruit of stream entry. Subhati replied, O blessed one, he does not. Why is this so, the blessed one? This is so because he does not enter anywhere, hence he is called stream entry. So this was interpreted differently in the Swatantrika Madhyamikas. So Madhyamika autonomous, yeah. So Prajana Karamati quote this to the substantiate the point in order to journey to Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha enlightenment, one must realize emptiness. This is excellent. So in the other commentary, it says this Diamond Sutra, the line, this particular line, to substantiate or to prove the lower school of thought, like Pratika Buddha and the Sharvaka Arhat, they must have realized emptiness. Without realizing emptiness, there is no liberations, right? So Lama Tsongkapha said, this is excellent, this interpretation. This scripture, the citation clearly demonstrate how if one is divorced from the view of suchness, divorced from the wisdom realizing emptiness, they clearly demonstrate how one is divorced from the view of suchness, one will not become free from the second existence, and how such a view is essential for gaining freedom from the second existence. That Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha Arhat are not free from a bondage of the second existence is something no learned person would assert. So which means Madhyamika school, Prasangik school, minor school, they all agree in one thing is Arhat. All the Arhat, Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha and the Buddha, all free from the grasping of self, the self person, from the delusions, right? But no learned person would assert, nor is such a viewpoint untenable. Arhat, which is not free from second existence, is untenable. So, therefore, these sutra, the citation, clearly demonstrate that Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha possessed the realization that phenomena lacks intrinsic existence. There are many more scriptural sources, such as the Great Mother Sutra, Panchaparamita, which means, and so on. However, the fearing has an excessive length. I have not written about these here. So there are many there are many, the passage from the sutra. So he said, I haven't, because it's going to be too much in this book. So I have not written about this here. So these are Diamond Sutra and the Prajaparamita Sutra and Nagarjuna's, right? Many sutras. So sutras backing up to prove that. So all Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha have realized the absence of intrinsic existing of the phenomena, right? So then the sources, treatises, and the Hinayana Sutras. So, and the Precious Garland state that so long as there is grasping at the aggregates, there is grasping at I. When there is I, the grasping, there is karma. And from this, in turn, comes birth. So long as the grasping at the aggregates means so long as you have grasping at intrinsic existing of the body, grasping at intrinsic existing of the feeling, the grasping intrinsic existence of anger, attachment, faith, compassion, the grasping intrinsic existence of eye consciousness, nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, or sight, or smell, or all these things. There is always the grasping of the self, right? Intrinsic existence. So these two are mutually depending. So when there is the grasping of self or person, the intrinsic existence, and then inevitably there is the karma. There's always actions. Out of the ignorance, there's actions. When there's the karma in turn, then there's a rebirth. With three avenues, no beginning, end, a middle. This round of cyclic existence resembles the ring of fire. So it's like a ring of the fire. So there is no, three avenues here means the delusions, karma, and birth. So these are the cycling, like the fire, a ring of fire. So there doesn't seem to have, this one is the first and this one's the middle, because this one after another, it's just cycling, right? So thus one causing the other beings revolve in this cyclic existence. Because these three, delusion, karma, birth, is cycling. So one brings the another, one brings the another. So it's like a kind of cycle. So the sentient beings, they're trapped in these three conditions. The sentient beings, when they're born, and the birth is causing the ignorance, and ignorance causing the karma. The karma caused the birth again. That birth caused another ignorance. So it's, the cycles of that. So sentient beings that trapped in this, the ring of these three avenues. Since it is not to be found at all in both self and others, even in the three times. So this was talking about, and how can we stop this cycle, right? What can help you to stop the cycle? So the way to stopping the cycle is so not to found at all in the self and others. So the total kind of, emptying the intrinsic existing of the self, right? Emptying the intrinsic existence of the self or person, emptying intrinsic existence of the self or phenomena. Even this in the three times means there is no conditional suffering. That is, there is no continuum of the person in the three times. There is no continuum of the second existing in the three times intrinsically, right? So this is again going back to the logic, like this a minute is remaining for 60 seconds. So ultimately, objectively, minute has never remained to be existing before the 60 second, during the 60 second, after the 60 second. The minute never ever objectively remain, right? Before the second, during the second, after the second, right? So objectively no, but conventionally, like mundanely, ordinarily, a minute seems to be remaining for 60 seconds. So similar, sentient being cycling in samsara, seems to be cycling in samsara, objectively, no sentient beings that is cycles, right? Because no sentient being or no self, no person, no male, no female, nothing really intrinsically exists. So therefore, no person is cycling in the 3 times, ultimately. So this kind of knowledge, this kind of wisdom can help you to stop these 3 avenues. So 3 avenues, again, remembering that the afflictive emotions like ignorance and the karma and the birth. So these 3 avenue cycles, how to stop. So the way to stop this cycle is, right, through realization of self intrinsically never exists in the 3 times, never cycle in the 3 times, intrinsically. So with this kind of wisdom can help you to stop the cycle existence. So even in the 3 times, the grasping at I will come to cease. So this will make kind of stop the cycle existence. From this, action and birth will cease as well. The first 2 lines of these citations indicate how, so long as there is the grasping at true existing of the aggregates, the identity view, the grasping at I am, will emerge from it. When there is thought of me, there is always thought of mine, right? So from it, in so doing, this line demonstrates how for the identity view to cease entirely, the grasping at true existing of the aggregate must cease. So by kind of, must cease. From this, we can discern that even Shavaka and Pratyeka Buddha Arhat have completely eliminated the grasping at true existing of the aggregates. This begins so unless the object of apprehension of grasping at true existing is eradicated. So without realizing absence of intrinsic existence, this is not possible saying. The object of apprehension of the identity view will not be eradicated. So without realizing emptiness of the body, without realizing emptiness of the sight and smell and hearing, so there is no way you can realize emptiness of person, right? Thus, we come to recognize that selflessness of person that is accepted commonly by both Hinayana and other Mahayana school negates only the core self-existing of person, and that such negation does not constitute the settled selflessness of person. So now the question, the kind of difference is here. In the Prasangika school and Nagarjuna's point of view is without emptying the intrinsic existence of sight and smell and hearing and the tactility and the body and feeling and perceptions, mental formations, right? So without emptying the intrinsic existing of the aggregates, there is no way you can empty the intrinsic existence of the person. So whoever has realized emptiness of the person must have realized emptiness of the phenomena, right? So now, so this is the one's own standpoint. Now the other school may have this kind of different idea. So Arhat they have only negated or the kind of, the absence of kind of true, the independent existing of I, not independent existing of the aggregates. So so here the core self-existing of the person and such negation does not commonly constitute the settled selfless of the person. So mind-only school, Sotandika school, medieval autonomous school, they don't really kind of agree on the kind of Nagarjuna standpoint, because this is the absence of emptiness of person and the absence of truly existing of phenomena are two different things. So absence of the emptiness of the person is kind of the grosser, or it's kind of less settled than emptiness of phenomena. So the Hinayana practitioners, mainly their goal is to overcome the afflictions. So they kind of realize, or they focus on meditating on the emptiness of I, emptiness of person, not the emptiness of the phenomena. So this is constitute the settled selfness of the person. And the view above, those who maintain that the Master Chandrakirti's position on how Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha realize the selfless of the person is the same as other school, but assert that he differ from others on the question of whether Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha realize selfless of phenomena. They have failed to properly comprehend this master's positions. For it is stated in the commentary that there is no realization of selflessness of the persons for someone who is divorced from the will of suchness. So as I mentioned many times, like absence of the self-sufficient I, absence of true, absence of intrinsic existing of I, two different things. So lower school, they always says absence of self-sufficient I. Self-sufficient means the self being independent and prominent and unity. Right? That kind of I is need to be empty. Right? So negating the self-sufficient I, not negating intrinsic self. So my Chandrakirti, Master Chandrakirti's the point of view is the selflessness of person means what? Absence of intrinsic existing of I. Selflessness of phenomena means absence of intrinsic existing of phenomena, right? So the next two lines from the Precious Garland indicate how accumulates the karma because of the presence of the identity of will. So karma, so you see in the Precious Garland, when there is I, the grasping, there is karma. So when there is the grasping of self-person, and then there's always, out of that ignorance, there is always karma or action. And how one takes birth in second existence owing to force of karma. All of this is stated and addressed one who has yet to eradicate object of apprehension of the grasping at true existing in relation to the aggregates. So again and again, they're saying that to know the emptiness of person, you have to realize the emptiness of the phenomena. The statement is not made from a more general perspective of the mere presence of the identity view in the person. For example, although the identity will persist up until the seventh ground, so one no longer take birth through the power of karma from the first ground. So this is different here, and Hinayana, right, the kind of Hinayana noble being, and the Bodhisattva's noble being. Hinayana noble being, they will end the cycle existence, cycling in the samsara, right, after they have reached the liberation, after they become the Arhat. So Bodhisattva noble being already abandoned the right cycle existing, conditioned suffering, when they reach the first ground. So from the first bhumi, they never rebirth through the force of karma and afflictions. So although they haven't abandoned all the delusions, but delusions very kind of, very passive. These are always delusions, Bodhisattva noble being, they haven't abandoned the anger, attachment, right? But they, this anger and attachments are not abandoned, but they have no activities. There is no activities of the anger, right? So the anger and attachment never overpower their mind, right? So so they use, this is like the poison in the body, but still controlled by medicine, right? So when you take the medicines, although you have a poison in the body, the poison in the body is never active. So this is like Bodhisattvas from the first ground, they have overcome the birth from the karma. So one no longer take birth through the power of karma from the first ground onward. The texts such as those cited above that demonstrate how, if one is divorced from the meditative cultivation of view of suchness, one cannot bring about the cessation of the identity of the view. They thus show that if one possesses only the path of 16 characteristics, such as impermanence, the affliction cannot eliminate. Therefore, to read Chandrakirtis as presenting a unique understanding of the selflessness of person, but then leave the intact the presentation of the afflictions. So, including the identifying the what constitute the identity view, based on the common level view of the selflessness of the person, one would committing the serious error. So about the delusions, Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Shantidevas, their view is delusion and the delusion means the includes the misconception. Ignorance is the delusion. The grasping of truly existing of person is the delusion. Grasping of truly existing of phenomena, even the grasping of truly existing of the spoon or salt is the delusion, right? So this is their unique kind of presentations, the kind of description about the delusions. So one would be failing to apprehend thoroughly the uniqueness of the Chandrakirti's philosophical system. Now, on this point, how can this master, who is sovereign among the learned ones, ever be mistaken? So Lama Tsongkapha, this is his kind of, what he thought. Lama Tsongkapha thinks that this masters, Chandrakirtis, the serving among the learned one, ever be mistaken. So this, and there's a story during the Lama Tsongkapha when he first kind of, from the beginning there, he is having the vision of the Manjushri. So he's cautioning, every time he examined even those masters, there's no, Lama Tsongkapha has no 100% trusting in even Chandrakirti is like that. So Manjushri many times remind Lama Tsongkapha, Chandrakirti, you cannot see the Chandrakirti has ever mistaken in his writing. Never doubt on Chandrakirti, right? So Manjushri has told Lama Tsongkapha many times, right? So Lama Tsongkapha now so this is kind of what he kind of from his experience. So those who fail to comprehend that Chandrakirti, in fact, establishes the standpoint that Shavaka and the Pratyeka Buddha do possess the realization of the selflessness of phenomena, those for whom it does not even cross their mind to inquire, right, whether there is a unique presentation on the afflictions. Such supposed to follow Chandrakirti related to this tradition with their devotion alone. So if you don't understand subtleties in the Chandrakirtis, the presentation of the delusions and the emptiness, and simply out of faith you follow Chandrakirti, so you are just follower of faith. So which means those follower of faith, they don't see the uniqueness in Chandrakirti. Right? So what I have indicated here is only the illustrative. There are numerous about the point, numerous other point of the uniqueness to this system that need careful investigations. The three avenues here are the three thoroughly afflicted factors of number one, afflictions. Number two is karma. Number three is birth. So three avenues here. So that there is no beginning, no end, no middle to these three is because from the affliction arises karma. From this arises the suggestions, the suffering, right? And from the suffering arises on subsequent stage as well as the further afflictions. So as I mentioned, ignorance, karma, and birth. So the birth is a continuum of the birth means is the continuum of the afflictions. Birth means is continuum of the force, the momentum of, right? The momentum of the karma. The birth means still kind of, your mind is bound with the kind of ignorance, right? So because of that, so the birth causes the ignorance causes the karma causes the birth. So like Nagarjuna's chapter 11, right? Chapter 11. Chapter 11. So he was analyzing on the birth and aging and death. So if you say the birth comes first, and after that, an aging and death. So then you have to go saying this first birth is without aging and death. So which means the first birth without no one has died. Right? So the first birth without no one has died. If no one has died, why he is born? Right? If the aging and death, it comes first, and after that, the birth happened. So then, without born, and how can there be aging and death? So there is no kind of, beginning. There is no beginning, and there's no end between these two. Right? So this, in similar here, ignorance, karma, and birth. So they just cycle continuously, right? To stop that, right? To stop that, to end the cycling is through a realization of emptiness of I, emptiness of the person, emptiness of the phenomena. Because of the karma and from the suffering, and from the suffering arises on subsequent stage as well as the further afflictions, since each product, each produce others, it produced the other. There is no fixed sequence, there's no orders, right? In other words, they mutually serve as each other's causes and effect. So this dependent origination does not come into being from self or other or both, or moreover, it does not does not obtain its arising through the intrinsic nature in any of the three times. So dependent origination of karma and ignorance, karma, birth, a dependent origination of birth and aging and death, right? So so now to stop that, to end the cycle, for example, the birth and the aging, right? The birth and the aging. So say there is no person intrinsically born by itself, born from itself, intrinsically born from other, intrinsically born from both intrinsically born without a cause. So no sentient being has ever cycled intrinsically in the past life and the present life and the future life. Right. This realization is the antidote, or it is the antidote to stop the cycle of birth and aging and death. So nor is such arising seems in a manner, and owing to this reason of seeing emptiness intrinsic arising, the identity view cease. So through the realization emptiness, through the absence of realization, absence of intrinsic existence, that eradicate the object of the grasping of self, a person. And in this way, once wandering in the cycle existing comes to be overturned, dogmas, overturned, stopped, right? overturn does not mean it's reversing. So again, you have to go back. So having established that the aggregates, eliminate, and so on, lack any intrinsic existence, the text explain in its conclusions how it is through having seen the truth of suchness that one transcends the sorrow. So these terms, in the Sanskrit and Tibetan, many times they use transcendent of sorrow and transcendent of suffering, right? So many Nyangela Devas, if the Nyange is translated as the suffering, then the transcendent of the suffering. If the Nyange is kind of translated as the afflictions, the transcendent of the afflictions. So here, sometime in the Sanskrit and the Tibetan, Nyange can be interpretable. So sometimes it can refer to the cause of the suffering, which is ignorance. And sometimes Nyange, the sorrow, is referring to the suffering itself, right? So therefore, sometimes the term that the transcendent of suffering is kind of, transcendent of sorrow, kind of, sometimes the emptiness is called transcendent of sorrow. And sometimes the cessation of the suffering is transcendent of sorrow, right? So if such sutra and pointing at emptiness, the transcendent of sorrow means now this sorrow is referring to the cause of suffering, misconception, right? So this says, thus, with this perfect truth, knowing that beings lack essence, like a fire starved of its fuel, a fire being ended by exhaustion of the fuel. So you have to end the kind of end the cycle of cycle existence, right? The cycle existence through the exhaustion of the ignorance. So ignorance is here used the kind of the fuel, right? So the fire ended through the exhaustion of fuel, and the cycle existence ended through the exhaustion of the ignorance. So ignorance referring to the grasping of self or person, and grasping of self or phenomena. So both has to end, right? So in this sutra, when you use the exhaustion of the ignorance is the cause of ending, or is the condition that ends the cycle existence. So this is also, you can kind of, one way there's the interpretation of that exhaustion of the fuels. So with this term, why did you use this kind of term, exhaustion of the ignorance, exhaustion of the afflictions? So this term many times uses in the Theravada Sutra. Theravada Sutra, when it comes to the explaining the emptiness, so they always use exhaustion, seva, right? So in the Mahayana sees the exhaustion of ignorance, exhaustion of second existence, when it mentioned, which means clearly in that sutra, right? For the Hinayana, Buddha teaches the emptiness. So thus, with the perfect truth, knowing that beings lack essence, like a fire stoked of its fuel. So with no basis, nothing to apprehend, how's that? Appropriate, with no basis, means lamba mebans. So when the ignorance is totally exhausted, right, from the exhaustion of the ignorance, there is no condition to appropriate the next life, right? So nothing to appropriate. So which means why? Through the exhaustion of ignorance, one transcends sorrow, who is free from the suffering. Because the fuel of the suffering, the ignorance of the afflictions has totally exhausted. Right? If one contained that this seeing, this seeing spoken of here that describe the view of the Bodhisattvas alone, this is incorrect. So again, they're saying that if you think the emptiness of the person, emptiness of the phenomena, only teaches in the Mahayana, so that's incorrect. Emptiness of the phenomena person are both Buddha teaches, right? And for the both school of thought, both the vehicles, law vehicle and Hinayana vehicle or Mahayana vehicles. Now this is being stated in connection with Sharvaka and the Pratika Buddha is evident from the fact that immediately following the phrase, one transcends sorrow, the text says the Bodhisattva too will see thus definitely spare for their awakening. Bodhisattva too will see thus definitely spare of his awakening. However, because of his compassion, he will take birth until his awakening. So with this realization, emptiness of person and the phenomena, right, that ended the cycle existing, this also happened in the Bodhisattvas. Arhat are free from cycle existence, no longer going to born out of ignorance and the karma. And the similar in the Bodhisattvas, from the first ground, they don't really born out of ignorance and karma. But out of their compassion, Bodhisattvas, their great compassion, very powerful compassions. So that makes them rebirth, right? Born again and again until they attain the great enlightenment. So with noble beings, their rebirth is, although they have no rebirth out of ignorance and karma, but out of compassion, they will reborn again and again until they attain Buddhahood. So when you reach the Buddha, right, when you attain the Buddha, then this is called the Buddha's emanation, right? So it's not a rebirth again, right, Buddha. So in Sanskrit, in their word, they use prakat, just manifest, right? From the Buddha to all his, for the ordinary mind or for the ordinary eye, they see they're born from the mother. So in the reality, Buddha has stopped birth, so manifest. So that's what we call zepa. Zepa means exhibitions. So his kind of life of childhood, teenage life, and then kind of going to school, and then enlightened and teachings all the manifestations is the exhibitions or kind of display. So the noble beings like Bodhisattvas true here means like Arhat and Sharvaka, the Arhat, particular Buddha and Sharvaka Arhat, they ended the kind of they ended the cycle existence. Bodhisattvas true, they have ended the cycle existing through their awakening, their realization emptiness. However, because of his compassion, he will take births until his awakening toward the enlightenment. The text of the Precious Garland cited the Chandrakirti's commentaries appear to be from and early translations. This is not very good. So this is something close to Lama Tsongkapha has seen, but we don't see that text. so this text is not really mentioned here, right? So for him it's this. For us it's maybe that. Also in the sutra taught to Sharvaka to help eliminate their afflicted the obscurations. Afflicted obscurations. The conditioned things are analyzed as a lacking intrinsic existence by means of 5 similes. So in Hinayana Sutras, form is like a mass of form, right? Feelings are like a water bubble. Perception are like a mirage. So mental formation are like a plantain, right, a tree. And consciousness is like illusions. Thus taught Surya Mitra. Surya Mitra is one of the names of the Buddha. Right? You know Surya Mitra, I had told that story before. So his lineage is called whole Shakya lineage, Shakya the king, rather, the royal, their lineage is called Surya Mitra. So commentary on the awakening mind drew the distinctions, stating that Buddha taught Sharvaka the 5 aggregates, while he taught Bodhisattvas how form and so on resemble the 5 similes, such as mass of form and the reference there is to those Sharvaka who, for the time being, they remain unable to realize suchness. It is not the mean to include all Sharvakas, for in this same text. So this is like, in the present of Buddha Shakyamuni, a star, a mirage, flame of lamp, an illusion, drop of dew or bubble, a dream, flash of lightning, a cloud, sea condition, things as such. So these are many times it mentioned in a Vinaya text. So Vinaya text, there's many the kind of the quote right from the sutra. So sutra they particularly taught and generally for the monks. So these are considered as a Hinayana Sutra or Hinayana Sutra or Pali traditions, Pali Sutra. So there are many times the Buddha mentions conditional phenomena as like a bubble, a dream, and a flash of lightning, a cloud, so mirage. So Prasangika school, Chandrakirti says, when this kind of example as to this example is So evidence of Buddha has taught emptiness for the low vehicles. Yeah. You know, one of the sutra, when the Buddha was giving teaching on emptiness, so there are the group of monks who stays very far, normally stays very far. So they came, attained the teaching. So the Buddha was teaching the emptiness. So for them, it's not making sense at all. So they stand up and walk away. And when they go kind of quite far, and they met one monk, and so Buddha instantly kind of what we call emanate, right? Emanate one of his manifestations. So, and the emanation of the Buddha asked, "Why do you come here? Why are you not stay in the teaching?" And they says, "So this is not really making sense to us." And then Buddha says, "What is not making sense? And what is making sense to you?" So, and then the emanation of Buddha start teaching the emptiness, right? And their way to explain it. So they understand, they say, and then go back for the the session, going back to the session. So they stay they listen to the teaching and they appreciate the teaching of that. So the Buddha is like, there's no need plan. So whenever there is need, whenever there is a kind of potentials, that the emanation of the Buddhas just manifest. So a mass of form, bubbles, water bubbles, and mirage. So the form is like a form. Form is like a mass of form. Soon the Uvandevatas. Uvandevas. Feelings are water bubble. Perceptions are like a mirage. So normally Sodanic school, they interpret this the form is like impermanence. Form and the bubbles are kind of, the example for the impermanence. Mirage is like, the mirage is for the perceptions, means, and here the perception turns the kind of, says the perceptions. In Tibetan, dushe. Dushe means discrimination awareness. The thought, which is continuous labeling on phenomena, right? Imputing or imposing on the phenomena. Or this is table, this is horse, this is a human being. So this discrimination awareness and pointing, right? It's a kind of labeling on the indicators. So indicators like imaginations, the characteristics, right? So kind of like imposition of factors. So these are like a mirage. So Suthantika school thinks that this the kind of like a mirage means is proving your thought is mistaken with respect to the appearance, right? So directly what appears to the thought is the imaginations, is the imposition of factors, imputed phenomena. So they don't really exist as it appears. This is like a mirage. So Suthantika school these things. So the water bubble and the form is like impermanence. So formations, mental formations, like mental formations like anger, attachment, kind of anger, attachments. So like you can say empathy, love, right? These are like planting trees, like a tree that the small kind of plants that live survive through the water. If the water dried, their inside is hollow, there's empty, there's nothing, there's easily dried up. So the emotionals is like planting trees that need constantly feed up with feeling, right? Feeling is always changing. Discrimination is always changing. So there's always likely to dry it up, right? So the consciousness is like an illusion. So in Suthantika school, illusions, consciousness, there's Suthantika school says, the consciousness engage in the object, right? So engaging an object with kind of like is the consciousness with anger. So engaging in an object. So the object that you're engaging, object that you dislike, is you have already colored that. So your discrimination awareness is coloring on that, and then the emotional angers is kind of being detached from it, disliking it. Right? Color that you have paint, so you paint and you dislike, and you paint you attached. Right? So the perceptions is like an illusion. So this is Suthantika school. Now the Prasangika school, Chandrakirti is saying, these are all not just to, yes, your kind of, the interpretations has some sense in that impermanence, and then kind of thoughts being mistaken with respect to the appearance and the perceptions and engaging on kind of a superimposition of factors, right? So these make sense, but what has Buddha's intention? What Buddha has intent when they talk about the forms and the bubbles? So, like for example, your impermanence, the impermanence here, the impermanence means instantly changing. So instantly changing, what is instantly changing? That the very concept of change is kind of, the very concept of change, like for example, change of minute, changing of minutes, first minute disintegrate, and second minute comes to kind of second minutes begin and second minutes end and third minutes begin. That continues doing that. That makes up the hour, right? So the change that you can understand is impermanent, but for the Prasangika school, change of the minute is because of it is changing. There is change that is not really objectively groundable within. For example, the change of the minute is not objectively groundable within the seconds. So minutes supposed to change with seconds, but minute has never existed within the seconds. So you see the changes of the minute. That very minute is not intrinsically exists, not objectively groundable. So the impermanence, that through the impermanent, what Prasangika school understand is the absence of intrinsic existence. Things are devoid of intrinsic nature, therefore things do not standing still, right? So not standing still, that right, for the conventional, yes, it's changing, but it is changing. That very change is for yesterday. Yeah, I think Friday we said the milk. If you think milk changed into yogurt, youth changed to aged. So the change of the kind of youth by changing is kind of youth by changing is going to be aged, old man, right? So that means aging. Your change is the aging. So aging makes the youth to become the aged one. So the aging, like if the aging is already happening with youth and getting becoming youth, becoming age is simultaneous. So this is impossible when you becoming a youth, right? From the childhood to the youth. So adult, right? So people say you are getting younger. You are getting right. So you haven't. The aging is not there, right? Aging is not there. So when the milk changed into yogurt, the change of the milk, that becoming yogurt is never exists within the milk. Milk is not going to bring that change. Milk is not going to turning itself is not going to turn into yogurt. To become the yogurt, milk has to cease, right? So to become the yogurt, milk has to cease. By ceased means it disintegrated. It ceased to exist, not exist. If not exist, how can it bring change? Change of the yogurt. So the Prasangika school says your impermanence here, impermanence, the understanding the impermanence through the change. So for the very change itself, as a conceptually imputed, right, imposed, and constructed by the thought. This change just merely exists in the face of thought. So Buddha, when he teaches that things are like illusion and bubble, so Buddha's intent is to teach us the intrinsic absence of intrinsic existence. So all these foam, water bubbles, mirage, plantain trees are the example for the absence of intrinsic existence. Yeah, so any questions? And also I mentioned last Friday, change. Change means within the change, what we see present is kind of going towards the future. So in the picture of the change, present is going to future. Within the change, another picture is future is coming towards you. Right. So this is like exactly like when you're sitting in the train, when the train starts moving, the station also moves. So it's kind of mental projection. So if you go with that, right, when you're grasping that, then milk has to go without losing its quality and identity. And suddenly milk says that from now on, I'm going to be yogurt. And the seed has to go towards transfer to the state of the sprout, because seed is the one that is giving rise to the sprout. So giving rise means when someone delivers the package to you, that person is coming at your door, right, and live there. So seed also go and deliver the sprout. So while the sprout is born, seed is still there. And sprout already manifests, and then he has to go back to the Amazon station. so, so there is this whole language, or language. A language is to express how things appears to the mind. So the things appears to the mind is like illusion like. It's exactly a mirage-like phenomena. Right. So every appearance, if that is as it appears is true, then when you sit in the train, when the train moves, the station also moves backward. So you have to believe that station goes somewhere. So change is, in the picture of the change, present goes to the future, future comes to the present. The picture of the change is like that. When change appears to the mind, it's like that. So this kind of reality is untenable. No future is coming to the present, no present is going to the future. So water bubble, this is like it. The things are changing in the water bubble. The bubble, that first bubble, and that sees and another bubbles. Right. So not bubble that kind of, popped, right? It's not reappearing again. Right. So the every seconds to manifest, it sees the manifest, second, third second. But from the first second is never reappearing. So the Prasangik school, they don't really accept reappear, re-arising. So the question is, how about reincarnations? then Prasangik school says, right? So that is the kind of defect from the language. So in English, there's a reincarnations. And here, in Tibetan words, there is no re. It's the incarnation or arising, or birth. So I don't know why the reincarnation, re. So then reincarnate and re-die. There must be re-die. so this death is not really successful for me. So I have to re-die again. So then, if the reborn, there's a reincarnate, right? Re-dying.
Yeah, Sheila, so when the Tantrika school reads this exact same simile, they're just looking at impermanence without the lack of intrinsic existence. Is that, how would you word it? If Prasangika is looking at this through the eyes of suchness, how is Satantrika viewing it? I know you said it, but I just can't remember what you said.
Satantrika school, so when they see this, when they read this 5 similes, right? So Satantrika school, so Buddha, this is Buddha's kind of, Buddha teaches about impermanence, not the absence of intrinsic existence. Like form, water bubble means it's all kind of, instantly changing, right? Disintegrations, right? The mirage is only you can, kind of they explain in the thought. So projections, like imaginations, right? The thought is engaging in its own projection. So the very projection or the imagination is never really exists as it appears to the mind. So the thought is engaging in a mirage-like object. Right. So then emotions, like a planting tree, they grow kind of water of the feelings. The feelings always changes, and then kind of, any emotions, they could not really sustain by itself. So it has to be fed up by the feeling. So feeling is always changing. So no emotional could really kind of, sustain by itself. So this is like a planting tree. So the Prasangika schools, the form water bubble means, right? For you, yes, it is impermanence, right? So you understand, or your interpretation of the form in the water bubble is to kind of, to describe the impermanence. For the Prasangika school says the impermanence, right? So the Satantrika school says instantly changing. Instantly changing means things do not, things do not standing still right after another minute, right after another second. So things do not standing still right after the second or second minute. So this is Satantrika school saying. So what kind of, what it leaves is things are, even the seconds has the kind of, the second has the second, 1 second is, it exists, stand by itself within its movement. Next moment, it may disintegrate, it may cease, but within its own time, yes, it's standing still. So the things do not stand still for the next moment, next minute, like day, the one day or day, not standing still the next hour, right? Months not standing still with the next day, right? So kind of, stillness is still, there's some kind of, they have this kind of acceptance within its moment. Yes, it's standing still. So Siddhantic school. So the Prasangika school says, so the second is arises. So the way it arises from its own cause so the kind of from the beginning, it is already disintegrating. Right. Second, what is the more settled than this 1 second? Millisecond, right? So within the millisecond, the second itself is not standing still. Right. So the Prasangika school is standing still. So your your understanding of if the second or the minute is standing still, if the minute is standing still within its own moment. So if the minute is standing still with first second and third second until the 60th second, it has to be standing still. If the minute is standing still with each second should have one minute. So when it comes to the 60th second, there's a 60 minute. So when the 60 second pass, 1 hour pass. Right. So Prasangika school says, these are your own projection. There is no such minute that really exists standing still with each second. So the water bubble means it's seemingly remaining for 60 seconds. Minute is seemingly, right? It seems to the thought. It decided by the thought it will remain for 60 seconds. It has to remain for 60 seconds. Your thought has decided that. Your thought has projected that because your thought measured the minute, right, from the 60 seconds. So because of your measurement and your thought has all decided, so minute should remain for 60 seconds. That remaining of the minute for 60 seconds, right, is not really objective. So when you see, the wall clock, when you see there's a handle what the minute and second.
Yeah, they're called hands.
Hands. Okay. So 2 hands. So one is longer, one is kind of, a little bit kind of thicker, bigger. So the smaller, the most kind of thinner one, hand, which goes all the way around. Then the second, the another hand, that's one move, right? So this kind of the representative of the minute is remain until the other second is kind of take one round. So if you picture that in minute and second, So there's a 1 of the minute that stays, right, from the beginning of the second, it just stays sitting there, and then 60 seconds it pass, and then it will just go away. So if the minute could stay deseparated from each seconds, like a minute is watching at the seconds, right? If it is possible, and why not minute that all it is standing there before the second has started? So these are whole mental projections. So remaining, right, instant changing. So these are conceptually constructed phenomena. Yeah, anyway. So the Chandrakirti is saying the emptiness of the phenomena, emptiness of the person teaches for all the follower of the Buddha who is genuinely seeking for the liberations. The liberations only brings through realization, emptiness of the phenomena, emptiness of the person. So you have, without without gaining realization of the emptiness of the phenomena, there is no possible of realizing emptiness of the person. So emptiness of the person, the absence or intrinsic existence of the person, is much settled than the absence of self-sufficient I. The self-sufficient I, which means I, which is non-Buddhist school, philosophically, they have constructed the Atma, which is independent from the body, independent from the feeling, independent from the mental formations, independent from the 6 perceptions. It is something deseparated from the 5 aggregates, remaining independent and permanent. So emptying that kind of I, right, is not the way to realize the emptiness of the person.
So the self-sufficient I is what others could call Atma.
Atmas, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you explain one more time about the word and Deva?
Yeah.
Liberation. You said it has a multiple way of interpretation.
Yes. Nyangela Deva.
What does each part mean?
So, because in the sutra, many times they use the Nyangela Deva, transcendent sorrow, sometimes emptiness, sometimes the cessations, sometimes the liberations. So I think why? Because the emptiness is can be you can also call emptiness as a transcendent sorrow, because by realizing emptiness, and you will be transcendent from the suffering. So and also the emptiness is when you realize emptiness, you have eradicated the main object of the misconceptions. So you have emptied the object of the grasping itself. So in that case, there's a meaning. The transcend. You you have eradicated the object of the grasping self. So this wisdom realizing emptiness is kind of, while meditating, single point of meditating the emptiness, so it's transcend from the misconceptions. Not forever, but while you are in meditations, the misconceptions has no space to manifest. Right? So through that realization, emptiness, once, right, you come to the point that now you have no longer the grasping the self in your mind, and then that is the actual transcend the sorrow.
So the Bodhisattva has some quality of transcendence.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this is the text. It reads, those who do not understand emptiness are not perceptive vehicle of liberations. Such ignorant beings will revolve in the prison of existence of the 6 classes of beings, 6 rams, right? So English translation, there is no rule. There are sometimes the rams, sometimes existence. So, so that confused the readers. Yeah. So 6 rams. Yeah. When presenting how the absence of intrinsic existence or phenomena is taught in the Hinayana scripture, the Precious Garland says, in the great vehicle, non-origination is taught. Right? In the Mahayana Sutra, their term they use non-originations. Right? So unborn. So these terms, many times they use the term non-originations is taught. So I think in Tibetan, it's unborn, is taught. In the others means sutra for the Hinayana Sutra, in the Pali traditions, in many sutras they use exhaustions. Namely emptiness, since the cessation and non-arising are the same. So non-arising is the same. Concede that Mahayana scripture is authentic. So concede, so it's kind of, in this Nagarjuna saying, so follower of Hinayana Sutra, says, don't be impatient. So the Mahayana teaches emptiness. So your own vehicle, your own sutra has talk about exhaustions, right? So in the Mahayana, a non-arising or unborn is the same thing. Don't be impatient. Accept it, right? So Hinayana, there's many times in some of the because of the school of thought. So many times there's a Mahayana is not Mahayana teaching is not directly direct teaching of the Buddha. So why? So there always is Mahayana Sutra talk about fasting. Mahayana Sutra talk about Ganga River is the purifications, right? And Mahayana Sutra talk about Namkadzit means treasure in the sky. So in some you see Hindu, the non-Buddhist school meditators, they do some kind of magical things. The empty hand, they just try to reach in the sky and bring some kind of treasure. So there's obtaining the qualities that you can use the sky treasure. So the Mahayana Sutra mentioned this kind of thing. So therefore, Mahayana Sutra is definitely not taught by the Buddha. So but Nagarjuna is saying, don't be impatient about the emptiness. So in your sutra, right, talk about exhaustions. Your sutras and talk about conditional phenomena like bubbles, and mirage, and illusions, right? And mirage, so many times they use. These all the same meaning in the Mahayana, non-arising, unborn, right? Absence of intrinsic existence. They are same, right? Accepted. And then Nagarjuna's also the answer for that Ganga river. So in the Ganga, there says, so right now people say Ganji river, right? Ganga is the Ganga river. During the Bodhisattva, many times there's the Bodhisattva as a Naga who lives in the Ganga river. So many times he, came to Buddha's teaching, and sometimes he requests, right, to explain a particular about emptiness. So there's a sutra that is answering for the Madhvas, Ganga's. No, Madhvas, yeah, I think it's there. So yeah, and also non-Buddhist school, they believe that Ganga is one of the female deities which come from the god realms. She came to the god realm, from the god realm to the human realm to benefit the sinners, to purify their sin. Right. So there's a Naga who lives in that Ganga, and also the Bodhisattvas. So his dedications, there's some kind of quality in that water can help you, right? So they purified something like disease, the illness, and then there's some kind of qualities there. So out of the Bodhisattva, not just because of the water itself. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? How are you doing, Larry?
My eyes are very light sensitive, much more than they used to be. And so sometimes I have a lot of pain just from the light or in my left eye. So I'm kind of constantly in that, some kind of state of discomfort. Yeah.
The meditative absence of I. So yeah, the kind of, in the Mahayana, the historians always say the not mentioning much about Hinayana, Pali tradition and Sanskrit traditions. Like, so in the text, the lower vehicles use the lower vehicle and the great vehicles. But it's the teaching itself, and sometimes you say this is teaching for the lower vehicle, teachings for the great vehicles. So the Hinayana and Mahayana, so still there are people who follow the Mahayana Sutra, maybe more Hinayana, sometimes possible, right? So the follower of the Mahayana, not necessarily they are Mahayana. By following the Mahayana Sutra, it's not necessarily Mahayana. So Mahayanas, the great vehicles, and Tekpa Chimbo. Tekpa means they translate in English as a vehicle, so carrier, right? So the great carrier means great burdens, great responsibilities. And why? Because the great compassions, great acceptance. So accepting every sentient beings, right? So, and then the great, taking a great burden of liberating all sentient beings, that called Mahayana, right? So there are selfish, self-centered Mahayana followers and great vehicles, great Mahayana and a follower of the Hinayana Sutras. Yeah. Chanju Simjo Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jeju, Jeba Nyamba, Mebanya, Kone Koto Pebrush, Tony Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jeju, Jeba Nyamba, Mebanya, Kone Koto Pebrush, Pama Simjen Tamjen, Deta Denju, Nyanjo Tamje Dado, Tonwa, the Chanju Simba, Kanda Sushu, Teta Kunye, Molom Jojiru, Kareja Veko Vishivas, Pendan Deva Manu Joven, Jeresa. May the
precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all the happiness. And may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by Snow Mountain, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. More powerful transit Tenzin Gyatso, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna.
Oh, thank you. Lisa.